The EU just dropped the hammer on virtual currencies, and Star Stable Online is the first game to get hit. So here's the real question: could once human be next? And that's what we will go through today. Even if you're not in the EU, this could still matter. When this kind of pressure is applied, the changes don't always stay local. They can end up becoming the new normal. So in this video, we're breaking down what these new consumer protection guidelines actually say, what kinds of systems they are targeting, and how one's human could be affected, or even forced to change. I will share my personal thoughts at the end, and I'd love to hear yours too, so stick around and let's get started. So here's what happened. On March 21st, 2025, the EU Consumer Protection Cooperation Network, also known as the CPC network, released a set of key principles aimed at one thing: making in-game purchases more transparent and fair. This isn't a brand new law, at least not yet, but these guidelines interpret existing EU consumer laws and will be enforced by national regulators. So yes, this is serious. Star Stable Online, a horse-themed MMO aimed at kids, is the first public example of these guidelines being enforced. So what did they do wrong? There were several red flags, and here are two examples that were highlighted by the EU. So this first example is about those preset bundles of star coins that you have to buy in Star Stable Online. The issue is that the bundles don't match the actual prices of items in the game. So let's say you want to buy something that costs 1500 coins, but the bundle options are 1000 or 2000. You are either forced to spend more than you need, or you end up with leftover coins you can't really use unless you spend even more real money. And that's the problem the EU is calling out here. It's not transparent and it pushes players to overbuy. The second example is pretty straightforward. It's about how prices are shown. In Star Stable Online, everything is priced in star coins or other in-game currencies like Jorvik shillings and tokens, but you never actually see the real world price. So unless you're doing mental math every time, it's hard to know what you're really spending. And that's exactly what the EU wants to fix. They want the actual cost in real money to be clear, upfront, and easy to understand. The CPC network gave the company behind Star Stable 30 days to respond and fix these issues, or they could face fines, forced changes, or even removal from the EU platforms. Alright, now let's take a look at one's human and how it could be affected by these new key principles. It's a free-to-play game, and yeah, it makes money through in-game purchases, just like a lot of others. But the question is, does any of that clash with what the EU is now pushing for? We're not going through every single principle, just the ones that are relevant to one's human. The stuff tied to pricing, currencies and refunds, and we see if any of it raises red flags. Let's start with one of the biggest things the EU calls out: showing real prices. The guidelines basically say that whenever you're selling something in a game, the real world money price should be clear and easy to see. But in one's human, if you go to the in-game store and look at something like character cosmetics, you'll notice everything is priced in Christian. That's the game's premium currency. So there's no actual pricing, for example dollars or euros. So unless you already know how much Christian costs, it's hard to tell what you're really spending. And that kind of lack of clarity, that's exactly the kind of thing the EU is trying to change. And it's a red flag, just like we saw in Star Stable. Next up, and this is a big one, the EU says games should avoid stacking multiple virtual currencies in a way that hides the real money cost of items. So basically, if you have to go through several layers of currency just to make a purchase, that's a problem. In one's human, you see this clearly with the loot crates. You spend real money to get Christian, then use that to buy Light Force ingots, which are what you actually use to roll the crate to get a random item. But it doesn't stop there. Those crates can also give you Light Force relics or gems, which can then be used to buy items from the crate. So you're going through a whole chain, from real money to Christian, to ingots, to crates, and to relics or gems or items. And at no point in that process do you see the actual real money cost of what you're getting. And that's exactly what the EU is warning against. The price should be clear, upfront, and based on what you have to pay in real money, no matter how many in-game currencies are involved. If it's layered and confusing, it's a red flag. Another thing the EU says to avoid is only offering virtual currency in preset bundles that don't match the prices of items, and not letting players choose exactly how much they want to buy. And once human does exactly that, Christian, the premium currency, is only sold in fixed amounts. So if you want to buy something specific, like a furniture pack that costs 580 Christian, there's no way to buy just that amount. So you are basically forced to buy more than you need, which almost always leave you with leftover currency. And yeah, that's the same kind of setup that our Star Stable called out, so this could easily be another red flag. Now let's talk about refunds, because it's another area where the EU has some strong opinions. According to the guidelines, companies shouldn't block refunds on in-game currency, especially if it hasn't been used yet. Players should have the right to change their mind within 14 days, simple as that. So how does it work if you're buying Christians through Steam? Well, this is what Steam says. You can get a refund on in-game purchases involving zone games within 48 hours, as long as the item has not been used, changed or traded. But for third-party games like Once Human, it's up to the company to allow refunds. And if they do, Steam will let you know at the checkout. So I tested this. I went to buy Christian in Once Human, and at the checkout Steam straight up said it's not eligible for refund. So no option to refund unused currency? Yeah, that's another red flag according to the EU's guidelines. So what happens now? These guidelines have been taken seriously. Startable is just the beginning. Any game with layered currencies, unclear pricing or shady refund practices is now on notice. If Once Human doesn't make changes, it could face formal complaints, regulatory pressure or even enforcement actions. That could mean fines, forced UI changes or even removal from the EU stores. Personally, I think this is a long overdue wake-up call. It's not that I'm against monetization. I spent money on games I love, probably more than I should admit. And I don't mind supporting developers. So I understand that game companies need to monetize, but that shouldn't come at the expense of transparency and consumer rights. And while this could force developers to rethink how they design their stores, it might also encourage better, more straightforward monetization in the long run. It's not just one big problem, it's all the small things adding up. Like buying more currency than you need, not seeing the real price, and not knowing if you can refund something, it all adds up. And the point is, it doesn't just make the system harder to understand, it chips away at trust. You start to feel like the game is built to squeeze you and not respect you. And that's the kind of design mindset that really needs to change. And if companies won't change it on their own, maybe they need a little push. I can't help but wonder, is it going to be another of those EU-only features, like stronger privacy policies or clearer cookie banners? Because it's easier to just isolate compliance, do what you have to in one market and keep business as usual everywhere else. That's what I'm afraid of, a split experience depending on where you live, and that doesn't fix the bigger issue. So what do you think? Should this kind of regulation be global? Have you ever been stuck with leftover currency in games like Once Human? Or felt tricked into spending more than you meant to? Would clear pricing and refund options change the way you spend in games? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I read every one of them. And by the way, if you want updates on this story, whether Once Human responds or what happens with Star Stable, let me know. Whether this leads to real change or just small fixes, it will be interesting to see what happens. Either way, it could still affect how other companies choose to respond, even if it takes a while. So this is it. Thank you everyone for watching and have a nice day.